And welcome back to Pokemon Team Creation Series. This one comes to us from Daniel, I'll try to pronounce your name, Fallardo, who asked the question, what is Ahsoka Tano's Pokemon team? Now, Ahsoka Tano poses not a unique challenge, but a challenge I've kind of seen come up before. The question immediately becomes, how do you look at Ahsoka Tano as a character? Do we look at her as a Padawan during Rebels, during the events of The Mandalorian, like in her adult years? How exactly do you, or like her later adult years, how exactly do you look at, the character of Ahsoka Tano? And as I was putting the team together, I quickly realized that I can't look at one era. Like, I can't look at adult Ahsoka Tano, because I'd be struggling to use more than 3 or 4 Mon on the team. So I had to basically combine her whole history together. So obviously, we know who Ahsoka Tano is if you're a fan of Star Wars at all. She was the Jedi Padawan apprentice to Anakin Skywalker. She would later be banned or outcasted from the Jedi Order, would go on her own, would become a not a fallen Jedi. Well, technically she's a fallen Jedi. But she would come back, aid in the events of Rebels against Vader, aid in the events of The Mandalorian to some degree, at least in that one episode, and aid in the recreation of the Jedi Temple that Luke was creating. So, what Pokemon go on a team for a character like this? Well, obviously, whenever we're dealing with sword-based characters, or characters that wield a weapon in the design of a sword, to the Honedge Doublade Aegislash line immediately comes to play. And in her case, it'd be a Doublade. She wields 2 lightsabers. Ergo, she would have a Doublade. That's pretty basic stuff right there. The Ghost type aspect, though, does at least kind of help out with characters in Star Wars that could at least sense the afterlife of the Force, or that comes with the Force. So there's that aspect. After that, though, it definitely was, that was the one I knew immediately had to be on the team. After that, now we're getting into some trickier characterizations, because when dealing with characters that can use the Force, any psychic, ghost, fairy, even dark, any Pokemon that can use energy-based attacks, or move psychic, telekinetic, things along those lines, any Pokemon can fit on that team, because the Force is not one definitive thing. It is an energy field that is created by all living things. It surrounds us, binds the universe together. It allows a Jedi and a Sith, any Force user, to use a multitude of techniques. But there's no one thing that is the Force for a Pokemon. Hell, you couldn't even say that Xerneas represents the Force, because Xerneas could represent the light side of the Force, but then say Yveltal wouldn't necessarily be the dark side of the Force. You need a Pokemon that is considered truly evil, or at least very much on the dark side of the spectrum. Giratina could arguably represent that, but Giratina is not evil either. There are very few Pokemon in the Pokemon universe that are explicitly depicted as evil. That's why I always bring up Malamar. Malamar is actually called an evil Pokemon. So when talking about the Force, we gotta look at, just some basic Pokemon that look like they could fit on the team, that still meet the type specifications for what the Force can do. And one of them was Hatterene. Now, Hatterene, I'll admit, it was a bit more of first off, it's a very feminine Pokemon, and Ahsoka is a woman, obviously. Now, I'm not saying all the Pokemon on this team would be women. For instance, Doublade is actually genderless, as far as we know. But in any of the other Pokemon, in theory, that aren't feminine-based, could be males. That's not what I'm trying to imply. What I'm saying is, because it is a feminine Pokemon, it's a psychic fairy, so that helps out a lot. And weirdly enough, I look at this Pokemon, and because there's no Pokemon that aesthetically looks like Ahsoka Tano, really. There's no Pokemon that has some sort of head crest like that. But weirdly enough, I look at this Pokemon, and I kind of see not of similarity, but some sort of like identifier with Ahsoka. Like this looks so weirdly enough like a Pokemon she would have on our team, and I can't really put it into words why. Maybe it's because the actual Pokemon itself isn't. When you really look at Hatterene, its actual body is inside this thing. This thing that you see here, this what looks like its body, isn't actually the case. It's more, I mean, it's part of its body. It's part of its overall form. But if you actually look at, say, near the top of its head, you see the little opening, you actually see a little bit of the actual inside of Hatterene. This is more like a protective casing that is still attached and still technically part of the body, but isn't actually its body. And I think that's kind of the closest I could find at the time to the head tendrils. It's not her hair. We know she doesn't have hair. I don't actually know what those things are called. Horns? Maybe they're called horns. So there's that. Another Pokemon that made it to the team. This one, I'll fully admit, this was the last one I added to the team because I'm like, okay, I can't think of anything else to put on here, so let me get another Pokemon that could be kind of like a representation of the Force. Espeon. Again, a feminine-looking Pokemon, but it could be a male, but it's just a very powerful Psychic type. This, again, looks like, and it's got that double ear thing going on, which that one actually is even closer to her horns than, say, Hatterene is. So, and you got the two tails split, that could, I guess, be horn. I'm now reaching for that. But I like the idea she'd have an Espeon on her team. That could be like her partner Pokemon. I actually think that fits pretty well. The last three, though, these three actually did represent something about her. So when looking up how strong she was in the Force, one of the things that came up was, even from like as a young Padawan, she seemed to be a pretty gifted Jedi. But one of the things she was very capable of was sensing things in the Force. She had very powerful sensory capability. She wasn't like the end-all, be-all, the best sensor that ever existed in the Jedi Order by any stretch of the mean, but it was something that she was noted for. So I'm like, okay, that's something I can work with. A Pokemon that has very capable extrasensory capabilities beyond the move extrasensory, which is actually a physically attacking move. It's the flinching move of Psychic types. I actually like that move quite a bit. So I'm like, well, it's also stated that she's actually pretty capable in hand-to-hand combat. She's actually very skilled, not just like swords combat, but hand-to-hand combat. So what Pokemon has the ability is a fighting type that has extrasensory capabilities? Well, it's our old tried and true friend, Lucario. Again, its ability to use Aura is very similar to the concept of the Force. Add on to the fact that it is a fighting type Pokemon and a steel type, which you could add the whole lightsaber hilt thing in there for. And it learns the way Bone Rush is depicted, or Bone Club is depicted. It is depicted as almost like a laser club, which is kind of like a lightsaber. At least as we see it in the anime. So Lucario made it to the team. These last two represent the young side of Ahsoka Tano. Her as a Padawan. Her as, a learner. And the first one up, honestly, when I heard that she had a really, especially as a kid, when I was reading and heard that she, not as a kid me, but as a young Padawan, she was following more her emotions and her gut and, those strong drives to help people and stuff along those lines. I'm like, okay, that sounds to me like someone who wants to protect and wants to do good, but is still very inexperienced in how to do that. And that sounds like the Swords of Justice, hence the name. And of the Swords of Justice, you have your young D'Artagnan, or Keldeo in this case. I think Keldeo, even though Keldeo is a very powerful Pokemon, so it's a mythical, but when you're talking about like the Three Musketeers, protecting the innocent other Pokemon, this is your Ahsoka Tano of that group. This is the one that wants to protect, has the ability to do it, but is young and inexperienced, and therefore can make mistakes. Is not as strong as the other ones and follows the other ones around. I wish I could have, I never really got into the events for Pokemon, so I never got like a Darkrai. I always wanted a Darkrai. I finally caught it in Legend Arceus, but I always wanted a Darkrai. Didn't get Shaman, didn't get Deoxys, right? They didn't get Mew when like the events happened, and I didn't get Keldeo when the event happened. I like Keldeo. Honestly, it's the best looking of the Swords of Justice, in my opinion. This water fighting unicorn, which when you actually look at it, it's not a horse, it's a unicorn. Keldeo's a unicorn. It's got a horn on its head. So I think it's supposed to kind of actually be also slightly based on a Kelpie, hence the water horse thing. But yeah, it's which, to be fair, you could do a lot better in terms of like a Kelpie-based Pokemon. If we ever, and I don't know how many regions we'll ultimately get in the Pokemon franchise, we'll probably still get a lot as long as it's cranking out money. But if we ever get an Ireland, Scotland region, which I don't know if we will thanks to Galar. Yeah, I say that out loud now. I don't know if we'll get one thanks to Galar. But if we were to get one, you bet your ass there'd be a Kelpie Pokemon. 100%. And again, Keldeo might take some inspiration from that, but whatever. Still, a young, inexperienced warrior wanting to do good and protect and having a lot of potential, that strikes me Keldeo to a T. Now, the last Mon on the team is another one that's not a fully evolved Mon. Well, actually, okay, so I don't know, I was right in saying that. Is Doublade's not a fully evolved Mon. A young, inexperienced warrior that is looking to grow. But one of the things that was pointed out is that, and you see it in the series, like not necessarily Mandalorian, because you can only do so much, but in like Rebels and Clone Wars, from the bits I've seen and the way it's described, she was a very acrobatic fighter. And, she was able to move very quickly, able to jump around. Not quite like Yoda, but still. And there is a move called acrobatics. So I'm like, okay, let me load down the list here and find a very acrobatic Pokemon here. And I'm going through it, and I'm like, none of these really fit. And I'm looking down, and I get to the bottom of the list, and I'm like, okay, so this one Pokemon can't learn it naturally, but it can learn it through a TR, a technical move. And it makes sense, too, because, Ahsoka Tano probably wasn't, she was probably acrobatic, but it's not like it was something that King gifted. She had to practice to get even more acrobatics. So that makes sense. So the last one on the list is last one on the team is Kubfu. A fighting type Pokemon that can learn acrobatic through a TR and is a Pokemon that after hitting level 70 will ultimately evolve into a much more powerful fighter like Ahsoka ultimately became. Also, you have both a water version of the Urshifu and a dark version of Urshifu. So it kind of lends credence to the idea that if she isn't careful, she could go to the dark side. So I like that kind of symmetry there. Ultimately, this is just my Pokemon team, and I could have probably picked a different Pokemon for the acrobatics if I really wanted to. I would have had to have gone down the entire list of Pokemon, knowing which Pokemon are actually agile and acrobatic and naturally without factoring a move in. But that would have taken a bit longer to do, and I like the idea of, again, the student growing into adulthood. And having two paths you could go on, hopefully choosing the right path. So, either way, that is my thought on her team. Doublade for her lightsabers, Espeon and Hatterene to represent more of the psychic aspects of the Force, telekinesis, so forth and so on, mind reading. Keldeo and Kubfu to represent the inexperience, but still potential of her as an individual, as a Jedi. And then Lucario to represent her martial prowess and her sensory capabilities in the Force. Still, though, this is just my opinion. What do you think Ahsoka Tano's Pokemon team would be if you did not agree with this? If you do agree, great, thanks, awesome. If you don't, though, what would you do for a Pokemon team? Let me know. Until then, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and I will see you folks next time.